Today we're going to be making sausage gravy, and you need whole milk, sausage, 2 tablespoons butter, a block of cream cheese, salt, pepper, and about 2 to 3 tablespoons of flour. Now I like to use cast iron and metal utensils, and so I am browning the sausage in a small cast iron. Now in the cast irons you want to make sure it really is shiny, just like you saw before I started going over it with the butter. And so I'm melting the butter now, and I want it to cover the entirety of the pan. So we're going to add in the flour. It's about 2 to 3 tablespoons, and you're using a fork to kind of press it in. You can see my flour starting to brown just a little bit too much, so I quickly turned my heat off real quick, and then I'm adding in milk. Now don't ask me how much milk. I don't ever measure it, but I always put in at least 2 things of milk during this process. Now I'm using the fork to kind of scrape it along the bottom. I do use a fork on a cast iron skillet, but if you're using Teflon, you'll have to use something else. And I'm pressing it flat, scraping it across the bottom, making sure everything's completely mixed. I add a decent amount of salt and pepper, kind of covering the entire top of it. And again, don't ask me how much. And I'm making sure that that's mixed in together. You're starting to see that it's bubbling. I have it on about medium to high heat right here at first. And then I'm going to be turning it down here in just a second. But I want to make sure that everything is mixed in together. And those bubbles, I like to call them googly eyes. The smaller the googly eyes, the thinner the gravy. And this would apply to any type of gravy. I mean, you could be making this with beef broth if you wanted. You know, not for sausage gravy, but you're looking at the googly eyes, I like to call it. And here comes our second thing of milk, and we're going to mix that in. You know, I had turned it on low, and so now I'm going to be turning it up just a tiny bit to about medium, and I'm making sure that everything is coming off the sides and nothing sticks on this cast iron here. Now my sausage is done. I already had something ready to put it in to catch up the grease. The biscuits are going in, and here is my cream cheese. I'm using about half a block of cream cheese. It was a beautiful snowy day on the day that I made the sausage gravy. Perfect breakfast for it. And so now I'm going to be adding in, going to be mixing this in a little bit more and turning it up just a tiny bit. You see I had paused for a second to put some bacon in, and I'm starting to see it bubble as I turn it up a tiny bit. Now I'm adding in the cream cheese here, and you see it bubbling with the googly eyes. I'm going to put in about half a block of cream cheese. You could put in an entire block of cream cheese if you wanted, if you were using more milk. And if you were using more milk, you'd have to up your butter and your flour. This is going to serve about 6 people. And I'm going to use the fork to kind of smash this in and rub it against the bottom of the cast iron. And you'll see that it's starting to melt now. And so it will fully melt and dissolve into what we right now have as milk gravy. And you see it bubbling more. The cream cheese is going to add a creamy texture. It is delicious. It is like a secret ingredient to it. And now I've got it on about medium heat, but you see that the bubbles are getting bigger. That means it's starting to thicken. And I added a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper, 1 tiny more dab of cream cheese, and then I'm mixing all this in again. And you can see the consistency is really starting to get a bit thicker. I do end up adding a little bit more milk here in just a minute, but you've got to make sure that it's fully mixed in. So now you're really seeing the bubbles, and I needed just a little bit more milk. My husband ended up saying that it was a little too thick by the time that I served it, but I think I let it cool a little bit too long. So I could have added a little bit more milk to it if I wanted to, But you can see it's kind of standing up a little bit. And so this is just about done. And you're seeing it's kind of firming up some. You always keep in mind when it's hot, it is going to be thinner than what it really looks like. So now it's complete. I'm going to turn it off. And now we're going to add in the sausage. Now, I always make sure that I've squeezed the grease out of the sausage with a paper towel or so. And I'm folding this sausage into this gravy here. And you'll see how it's thickening. Now, I only used half a tube of sausage. You can use a whole tube if you wanted to. It just depends on what your liking is and how much you have, readily available as well. Our biscuits are golden. I love biscuits in the air fryer. They are delicious. So now you've seen I've turned this off. This has stayed off, but I am kind of mixing it. And this is standing up. So, if you wanted it a little bit thinner, you could do it then. Now, this is served. You can see how thick this is, but it had cooled for a good while, probably 15 minutes. This is gorgeous, and it was absolutely delicious.